Captain Picard has a headache. Lieutenant Worf checks on Picard's fairly heavy chest. And the USS Stargazer has seat belts. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of The Next Generation Season 1, Episode 7, The Battle. Story by Larry Forrester, teleplay by Herbert Wright, directed by the legendary Rob Bowman. This was November 16th, 1987. Where were you? Special thanks to Grandpa One for sponsoring this entire season, a.k.a. Tim Baum. How you guys doing?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
All right.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those episodes I could not remember a single frame. I have no recollection of this episode whatsoever.
Do you think it's because you had some of the episodes were pretty focused on you, and this one was certainly you were part of the crew of their incoming message, Captain, or you just had these couple things here and there. Maybe you only had like a couple days that week.
Well, I mean, I was, obviously whenever they're on the bridge, I'm there, and so it never was only a couple days, even if there was no engaging of the character that much. I still was always in that position. But I mean, I couldn't remember sitting in the conference room, all of us lined up like that, or I just couldn't. If you would have asked me what was the battle about, there's no way I could have answered you. Absolutely. And I may still not be able to answer you if you ask me now. What is this thing? But okay, we'll get into it.
I actually thought about that when I watched this, Cirroc, I was like, this feels like it's an episode a little bit more for Cirroc. Cirroc kind of likes the mysteries and this and that. For me, a little less. And I was like, and I think Denise, so far from what I know of you, even less than me. But we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. What do you think, Cirroc?
One, I'll say that I've grown on the characters now at this point. So watching it now, I feel comfortable with the characters. I feel like I have a sense of who, the crew is. And so with that said, I'm comfortable with where that development is. The big issue is with the story, I guess, and how I felt it unfolded. Sometimes I'm watching and I'm thinking, I wish they would get to it already, like get to the part that they're going to get to, because they did a lot of setting up with the headache, this, and that. And I'm thinking, okay, we get it. We're trying to do something's wrong. We get what you're saying, but you can't keep hitting that same nail over and over again without getting to it. And that's why I felt like if they had gotten to the Picard taking over the other ship earlier, and it really been a drawn out battle and more of a confrontation, or maybe he escapes, and it could have been more. They could have gotten to him on that other ship sooner in the storyline for me.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it could have been much more. Yeah. Much more integral to the whole episode, that Stargazer battle, and I would have. I think the whole effect of it with the flames and the people not having any expression, even though he's, this is a mind, a thought of his. It's not actual, but how much more compelling it could have been if they really staged the Stargazer. The action on it that was going on, not just this kind of fake, imagery of like what you have behind you, Ryan. There's like, it was so distracting to me to have these flames going and no one's reacting.
Going in this direction too.
There's no expression on any of their faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting choice. What I actually liked about that slightly differently was, and I only noticed this at the very end, was when Picard's talking to one of these phantom memory people, the guy turns, I think it was Vigo, turns back, and there are like lines being said, but the actor's not actually saying them. So it's like in his memory, they're just these weird, stiff whatever, but they're not actually saying the words. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have noticed that until the very end. But I think what the fans may like about this episode, and for me, kind of the only thing that I really enjoy a lot about this episode is the Stargazer itself. Because Picard later on is always talking about the Stargazer. It was his first captaincy. It was like the good old days on that little old ship with the 4 nacelles, and we actually get to see it. And the exterior shots of it are really beautiful. I love that, and I just, it's nice to see that old ship that he's always talking about, and that is actually revived in another ship called the Stargazer, or in other things in the new Picard series, they talk about the Stargazer as well. So that's, and they have a new Stargazer ship. So that's the fun part. That's the Star Trek nerd part that's enjoyable. The mystery that's not really my thing as much.
It wasn't much of a mystery. It was it was pretty obvious what was going on, that the Ferengi were there, they were doing some manipulation, that it was a trap. All of those kinds of things there was no mystery to it. It was pretty face value.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it just was, we know what's going on now, that we're just waiting for the crew to catch on, because we're cutting to the Ferengi, and they're, manipulating that sphere and talking. We don't know exactly what, that kind of stuff. I had to kind of go, wait, what is this? What is he doing? The techno stuff is like, I'm trying to wrap my head around the thought manipulation, because it's circuitry of some sort. And, it's a little, I don't know. It's a little rough edged to kind of smoothly grasp the story. Plus you've got the Ferengi, which don't make it easy to kind of comprehend really their speech and everything. So I lose a lot of the dialogue when they're speaking.
And I also felt there's moments when Picard is essentially confused and in a shady place the whole time, and I, as the viewer, felt like that as well. I was foggy about, like, what are we, what happened exactly? What are you reenacting? What is this reenactment about? Is it something that you're forcing? Is it a new version of events, or is it a reenactment of already occurred events? And I was kind of vague about that kind of a thing. And there was just moments where I felt lost looking at it, and just as lost as Picard.
It's hard for me to really believe that Picard isn't absolutely sure of what he did. That he would be even, yes, it's my voice, but it obviously is kind of adjusted here. It's because I know for a fact, he's that good of a captain. He's not going to now believe that he shot and did all this. He would have been court-martialed, or, for doing something like that. It just was hard for me to kind of think that he wasn't absolute about what happened to the Maxima.
Right. They were making it as if he shot an unarmed vessel or something, or a vessel that wasn't deserving of being fired.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was totally I did like that he was cooperative with what the penalties would be, so it was like, well, you have to turn, you know what the procedure is. Number one, you got to go report this, and it'll take a day for it to get there. And so I like that aspect of the story, that kind of where he was cooperating with it as opposed to acting like a madman. He was more cooperative.
Right.
I enjoyed that.
I like little bits like that too, that I wish we had more of, because again, I approached this from having seen the whole series a long time ago, but I know where it goes. And there were these little moments that I wanted to see more of. For example, when Geordi corrects data and he's like, we know it's this ship or whatever it was. That's a nice, that's a nice little thing because Data's just saying, hey, it's one of the two ships. And then Geordi's like, hey, bro, it's this one, and it's nice for him to kind of have Picard's back, but it's also cool for him to kind of keep him in check. But another part that I really liked and would have liked to see more of is, and it was subtle, when they go on the Stargazer as a group, Worf reports to Tasha Yar. He says, the rest of the ship is clear of surprises, Lieutenant Yar.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think, that's right. Worf is reporting to Yar. She's the chief of security. And I would have loved to see more of that dynamic of chief of security and her like second in command and how that dynamic works. And, I just would have liked to see more like a full scene or two or an entire episode devoted to that. Because that's like middle ranks. It's not captain and commander or counselor and doctor, and it's not like ensigns. It's like that stuff in the middle that the fans really want to, sink their teeth into. And, Denise, you said you don't remember filming this episode, but do you remember anything about that dynamic between you and Michael Dorn or Yar and Worf?
It was never, that's a great point you bring up. It was never fully sketched out and addressed. I got the role of chief of security, and Michael Dorn came on a little bit later. We had all kind of been there already, and they added this character, so it was never really. Okay, well, what is the dynamic here? Who are we to each other? You're obviously in security, I believe. I mean, but he's wearing red, right?
Mm-hmm.
His uniform. So I mean that it wasn't really defined, and I don't think they knew it yet.
Red meat is operation, or red is command and helm, which is kind of confusing because you would think that he would be in gold. So he might be in flux going from one department or division to the next or something. Right? But it's a little
and he's a lieutenant as well, right? He's lieutenant
junior grade.
Junior grade lieutenant.
Junior, because he established that with Geordi in the other episode when he was looking at engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And he was
he's the new guy in Starfleet, just like the new guy. Apparently, I didn't realize that he was added later to the show.
Yeah. Well, not that much. I can't. Let's see. Does he appear in the pilot?
Yeah,
he does. Okay, so
they probably already started filming on the pilot by the time they cast him.
Yes. I remember there was a delay when he joined. Okay.
Do you know if that's because he was just a character that was added later, or was it just late casting?
I couldn't be 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure. I kind of, as I recall, I kind of want to think that it was like a second thought, like an afterthought to have. We need a Klingon. Let's get a Klingon onto the bridge, and then they got that together. Cast him.
Do you recall any of that set from the Stargazer? Because it looked cool that they built a whole nother bridge.
Yeah. No, I can't remember. I can't remember anything about it.
It may have been like a redressed battle bridge from the first season. I think our pal Eve England, our associate producer, messaged us about this morning saying that she's not going to be at the free-for-all later because she has a migraine. So while she was watching this episode of Picard, she's like, it was not fun to watch him going through this while she was. So she's not going to be there. But she mentioned something about a redressed Stargazer. I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, when Picard gets on the helm of that Stargazer and he wipes down one of the consoles, I was looking like, were they cooking cheeseburgers on that show? Because there's so much stuff caked on there.
Oh, I know.
He needs one of those scraper things.
Yeah.
Well, the thought I had was when he beams onto the Stargazer towards the end and kind of reimagines the battle. When our crew last left the Stargazer, there was all this burnt char on the captain's chair, and when he cut beams on, it's gone. There is no. I thought, oh, he's got to go like that, like who wiped the char off the chair? The char
off the chair.
This is where my mind goes.
Where the heck did that char go?
He's sitting on the crumbs.
Yeah.
Oh, but did you notice? That's the only ship I've ever seen. Well, not ever, but on Next Generation or on Deep Space Nine that had a seatbelt. It was like thigh clamps. When Picard was sitting in the captain's chair of the Stargazer, he had these thigh clamps that went over his bathing suit area, basically, and he unclamped them to get up. So I was like, we finally do have seatbelts.
I thought that was like the control panels.
Probably. There may have been buttons on it, but it went like that. So
that's his old thigh master. He left it there, and it's a futuristic version, guys. You know what? You know what I also did like? Oh, you're about to take a break, so we'll catch it on the other side if we are. But
no. I was just going to say we got a few minutes, but I did say I checked what Eve said, and apparently, they reused some of that stuff from the Battle Bridge and from some of the movies, the previous, it must have been original series movies. What were you going to say?
It looked original series, though. It did look like
an older ship, so it was nice to have that retro feel. Really good detail there.
Yeah, I almost wanted to see it in its lit condition as opposed to all burnt up and kind of not well lit. I wanted to see the brightness of the equipment and kind of the detail. They wanted to hide that, obviously, because we may have recognized something from some other episode. But I think they could have gotten to that earlier. And I wanted to see him get to that ship earlier because they get to the ship and the conflict resolves relatively quickly after he gets on the ship. And it could have been a lot more at stake. The crew of the safety can be at stake. And I think that's one of the things that makes for good drama is when you actually feel like something is at stake, right? It's a possible thing that somebody's going to die. The tension is raised. And I just never felt that from the Ferengi in this episode.
Yeah. What if that's the opening sequence is Picard saying he has a headache, something else happens. And then they say, hey, where did Picard go? And they say he's transported onto another ship, and then cut to the theme song. And then it's kind of starts there. And there's like that would have been really interesting. I was just worried when it first started and they mentioned the Ferengi. I'm like, are we going to have to wait 45 minutes to see the Ferengi again?
I did think that too. I thought the same thing. I was like, is this going to be one of those things where they talk about the Ferengi but don't show them? But they did show him, and actually that was another one of my comments is the improvement of the portrayal of the Ferengi, in my opinion, in this episode. It's really a night and day difference from the Ferengi we saw a couple of episodes back where they were acting like, chimpanzees and jumping around, looking all goofy. Yeah. This version of them seems like the one that's more what we expect out of Ferengi, which is financially motivated, but also intellectual and well-spoken, not acting like cavemen type, people.
Well, and the whole
but they had the caveman garb.
The whole thing.
Well, the caveman garb is all right. Yeah.
Well, and that whole, thought creator, that manipulator, that's a pretty advanced little concept they've got going here. I mean, I wasn't aware of that was a thing they do. We see?
I don't think we see that ever again. I don't think we see that ever again. Maybe in one future episode, I don't recall, but I don't think so. Certainly not in other series. But the technology is consistent visually with the Ferengi, that ball, like that Tron-looking sphere.
Yeah.
Cirroc, if you'll remember when they took the little Ferengi Marauder ship or whatever class it was in Little Green Men, and they're they have like this Tron-looking ball, and that's kind of how they steer with things. So that part's recognizable, but the technology, no, I don't think we ever see it again because that's weird.
Yeah.
And I just laughed when I heard that the guy says, "Oh, I had to buy 2 of them. It cost a lifetime worth of salary to buy 2 of them." And I'm thinking he only had to buy 2 for the sake of the story because they needed one on board the ship and one on board the other ship, and it's just not realistic that he would have bought 2 of this very rare thing that you can't, nobody's ever heard of before. That it would even be ridiculous that there are 2 of them. It should be something that there's only one of, that a Ferengi found himself able to procure. But I don't see, the only reason they made it 2 is because they needed to have it in multiple places, and so they had to reverse the story or rewrite that part of the story.
Like for us, when we have to buy these super rare spheres, we have to buy them by the dozen nowadays.
Yeah, Costco. Yes. It felt like a convenient way for them to explain why there was one aboard the ship and one aboard next to Picard, but they could have gotten away with a better way to execute that story without there actually being 2.
Let's hop over to our break very quickly. There's a bunch more stuff there, and I'm going to never stop being obsessed with wishing that we had a Yar and Worf episode. Maybe there's one that I don't remember, but I would have loved to see that, because in other series, we see that little chain of command, that little dynamic between number 4 and number 5 and things like that. But anyway, we'll take a super quick break. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody, it's your lucky day. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hi.
All right. We are back with The Battle. That is Next Generation's episode, The Battle. Here are the trivioids of the week. So you're dying to hear them. The Enterprise is in the Xendi Sabu star system. That's Xendi, not Xindi, which is from Star Trek Enterprise. A Ferengi vessel has requested a meeting. Captain Picard has a headache. Wesley was playing with boosting the sensor output. The Ferengi want to buy commander data. Picard never heard the Battle of Maxia referred to so dramatically before. Captain Picard smells smoke. Vigo was the weapons officer on the Stargazer. The Picard maneuver is not what we remember it to be. Most people remember it as fixing your shirt like this. Riker doesn't want a computer science lesson. Worf checks on Picard's fairly heavy chest, and the USS Stargazer has seatbelts, kind of. I just added the kind of.
It has a thigh master.
Yeah. The Xendi, it was Xendi, not Xindi. That's one tiny little thing.
I thought it was Xindi, actually. I thought it was the same Xindi as I wrote down Xindi, but I guess it's a whole different thing, right? The Xendi.
And we've seen one now in also Prodigy, Star Trek Prodigy, the great work that they do there.
Right.
Picard maneuver, yeah. And they wanted to buy data. Like you guys were talking about the Ferengi being a little bit more fleshed out. Like they even said something like the captain has been, confined to his quarters because for entering an adventure that is not profitable or something like that. We're like, that's the Ferengi I know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They definitely got better with the Ferengi in this. And I like they made one little Ferengi joke, which I thought was funny, when he says, like you humans say, I'm all ears. I thought that was a great just a nice little insert there. Good, clever writing. When I heard that the Ferengi were calling it the hero of Maxi, or all of this stuff, the Battle of Maxi, and all this, the way they were interpreting their side of what happened, it reminded me of a documentary I just recently saw, and it was about Vietnam and the people there in Vietnam. the person there recording the documentary said, yes, back in the Vietnam War, and they corrected him and said, well, no, we don't call it the Vietnam War. We call it the American War.
Yeah. I love it.
You guys call it the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
We call it the American War because it's something that you guys brought to us. So I thought that was just just a funny way of how two people can recall the same event from a totally different perspective. So I did find that to be accurate, actually. The Ferengi see it one way, Picard sees it another. And yeah, I mean, I was looking at this like the ghost of Picard's past. It kind of was like, that Christmas movie with the ghost of
Christmas Carol.
Yes.
Which, by the way, Patrick Stewart has played Scrooge in that play in the past. He really has.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
Wow. Yeah. Good, nice tie-in there.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt like. This was the Star Trek version of that story, which I wish they walked us through it like that. It would have been kind of fun to see it almost more done like the Ghost of Christmas Past. Like, these are the kind of decisions you made, and this is how it led to this. What it led to, or you could have made this decision, and this is what the outcome would have been. I would have enjoyed that to see maybe him walk down 3 different versions of the future that could have happened had he reacted differently in that battle. That could have been good to see.
Yeah.
But so that's where I was kind of let down a little bit, because there wasn't enough surprise for the element in this. But there were things that were positive. I did like the moments. And, that's what it comes down to, is these really small moments between characters that make us really like it. And I like the moment when Riker is going into the secure room and he tells Geordi, he's like, make sure the line is secure. And he just runs into the room and the door closes, and Geordi kind of looks, he's like, secure, sir. But he's saying it to himself. He's not saying it to, because he didn't wait for a response.
That's the power of LeVar Burton. You'll keep noticing that LeVar, like Alexander Siddig in Deep Space Nine, sometimes they just get 2 words, but they make the most out of those 2 words. They create some kind of facial reaction. They add inflection, and they really do a lot out of those 2 words, and that shows a really good actor.
It's a lot of attitude, LeVar brings in a lot of attitude with this role.
He does. And I just like the timing. He waited for the door to close, and he's like, all right, secure, sir. Like, wait for me.
Right. Yeah.
So I like those kinds of moments. I noticed that I kept writing it down, because at first I was like, did he say damn? Because Picard says, this damn headache, and I was like, wow, okay, you said damn once. But then it kept popping up. I counted 3 times. I don't know how many dams there were, but I caught 3 dams. I'm like, well, that's a lot of dams for one episode.
Wow.
Specifically because I recall on DS9 how strict they were about using phraseology that is kind of, relevant to a certain time period, right? So you wouldn't say, hey, what's up? What's happening, man? It just, it's too period. It's too dated. And I noticed that damn was allowed a lot, and there were some other things. Dr. Crusher said, I wish to hell I knew, what was wrong with you. And I'm thinking, okay, they're really getting on the border of appropriate kind of conversation in a workplace kind of military environment, right? But so I noticed the dams and the hell. So I was like, well, that's a lot.
And Picard said Will for the first time. Remember a few episodes ago, he called him Bill for the only time, but he does call him Will a lot of times in the future. But this was the first time I remember hearing him saying Will. It's like, oh.
To Riker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I thought Jonathan Frakes is also growing in his role as the number 1. But the issue I had, again, I'm sorry to beat down on certain points, but I felt like this was the mutiny episode almost in some way, playing out all over again, because there was a time when they're basically going to say he's not fit to run to be the captain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's almost like, well, you just finished hitting that note in a storyline not too long ago. It's not like it was, a whole
it was
half
like
a
2
season or another
episodes ago or something, right?
2 episodes ago. He was, they were considering mutiny and claiming him to not be fit to run the thing. And now again, I think the Crusher said with objection, Dr. Crusher, she was like, he dismissed her, and she basically was trying to say, I object to you being
she wanted to get these scans, which we never came back to. I mean, when he's sleeping, she's putting those monitors on his head. So now she's got the results, and she is going in to tell Riker, you got to look at this. And the captain happens to be there by her, to her surprise. And she never does. She never is able to kind of wrap this up. Like what was on those scans? The whole battle, and
it seemed like it was enough to remove him from power. Like, the evidence was going to be there that she said, you're not mentally capable to make decisions.
Yeah, medical leave.
I thought that was I thought that's where she was headed.
Right. Exactly. I think probably she was. And then all of a sudden he was quite, he said the sleep did him some good, but he was like quite a changed person.
Mm-hmm.
All of, I mean, it was fun too. Did you guys notice the pillow that it's like a giant block?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going,
the future.
How could that be comfortable?
Yeah.
I think these are the thoughts I'm having watching this.
Big old kink in your neck.
Giant bolster that he's laying on. What?
Maybe it's like
no wonder he's got a
needs
headache.
A cuddle pillow. He's just like he needs something to.
Yeah. I could see him holding
with.
that, but that looked like to me the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen in my life to lay your head on. It's like
lay your head on my pillow,
on my bolster.
Yeah. Hey, Wesley had a nice little uniform action there. He had a nice new outfit, right?
Very 70s, it looked like to me.
With the colors.
But also, again, Wesley figures out, the game.
They can't recycle that every time. That's
I was worried about that when he popped in and he said, well, actually, I was like, oh no, is this... Luckily, it was just a little, it was a blip, and then they moved on. But I was worried that now, on the other hand, I did find myself when Troy and Crusher come to explain it to Riker, and then one of them says something like, was it low frequency? I was like, why didn't you just bring Wesley with you to explain it? Like if he's the person that came up with it, just say, oh, good, come with me, tell it.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, stay over there.
We have no idea what you're talking about, but we're going to tell somebody about it.
That's the game of telephone right there.
Yeah. And I love how when they leave and he says, thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
And then he goes,
adults.
Adults.
Yeah. I mean, but again.
But come on. Look, you're on a crew full of literally the best and brightest of people that went through Starfleet Academy, that have experienced battles, that have fixed engines in emergency crisis situations, that had to deliver results in a timetable that's unrealistic. These people have seen so much stuff, and here comes this boy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know anything about brain scans, but I happen to be analyzing brain scans."
My science project.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, I was like, "What?" And even when he came in the beginning, he said, "Oh yeah, I was just trying to boost, something." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, should you be doing that? Kid?
Yeah, who gave you permission to?
Nobody knew that was. He was
I was just fuddling with the warp core. I was trying to see if I could detonate.
Was it Lieutenant Singh that said you could do that? Because he's dead. I remember.
Yeah, that was sort of my reaction. It was like, what? You were what? You were doing what?
Oh yeah, and then Data actually says we have to talk about this later.
Yeah,
and they just made it on. They didn't have the conversation on camera, but again, it's like you can't keep using the same tropes. You can't use the mutiny trope over again. You can't use the Wesley has all the answers over again. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, this guy Data is a supercomputer, has downloaded literally the entire world's information in his head, and this boy knows more than him.
Right.
Because Data was like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you mean? How did you do that? You're the genius, Data. He can't be smarter than that guy. It's just unless he's genetically
in subsequent
modified
episodes. It is Data that has that role. It is where they just go Data theorize how could or the ship's computer, for example, Major Roddenberry voicing it. Right now it's Wesley, and later on to me it makes a little bit more sense when you're just asking like a theoretical kind of thing. Ask the robot. This guy knows everything, right?
Yeah.
Let's ask Chat GPT or whatever that is.
Siri. It's
100%. I believe that Data is more likely to be the go-to guy, and it doesn't make sense that this kid would know more than all of these people combined. Yeah. Where even Geordi was like, "What? You did what?" Data was like, "Huh? I don't know. How do you do that?"
Boy, let's check out the brains on this kid.
Not only were you capable of doing, we don't know how you did it, but who let you in there to do this? I mean, that'd be like me, coming out to get in my car, and my son when he was, 14 or something, going, "Hey, Mom, I fixed your brakes."
Yeah. I gassed you up and I got us some groceries.
Yeah, exactly. And I had the brake pads changed.
Like really? Yeah.
What?
Did you pay rent too?
Yeah.
But I did like the moment when the subtle acting moments that I like, and that's just the actors just making it work and just having good chemistry. I thought when Picard says, "I thought I was captain," I loved when he said that. And then the answer, Dr. Crusher says, "Oh, you are." And he says, "Thank you for the confirmation."
Yeah.
That was good. That was good writing, in my opinion. I like that. And that's the back and forth that keeps these things kind of going and light. I thought the music held up really well for moments when I was kind of feeling low on the energy in the scene. The music kind of helped me get through those moments.
Helps a lot. Oftentimes
it does.
What do you guys think of Kazago, who my autocorrect here on my computer changes to Kazoo, but that was and Riker is Ryder and Troy is Trio. All of those sound I'm not taking any of those anywhere. But
trio.
What do you guys think of Kazoo? Like, that's the first time we've seen now already. That's only the second appearance by the Ferengi. But we already have one Ferengi being like, well, that Ferengi's not so bad. We had a little meeting of the minds kind of situation there. An understanding.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was good. I said, it was a huge improvement to what we saw the Ferengi before. I actually like the Ferengi that didn't have anything to do with this plot more than the one that was conniving. Right. I liked his performance a little bit better. I thought he played it right. But the Ferengi were good.
Well, how about this? It's time for our beautiful seventh rule. I need to figure. I always hold this thing upside down. The home run of the episode.
Yeah.
I think Denise is like, this is a tough one.
Oh, man.
Who gets the home run of the episode?
Wow, let's see. This is a tough one because it's just, it doesn't knock it out for me, this episode. It's hard for me to find a home run. I mean, being a baseball mom, I'm very careful with my homers.
It's like singles and doubles for you right
here. Yeah.
Is there a base hit? What's your base hit of the episode?
Well, okay, I'm gonna give it to the Stargazer.
Yeah,
I think that, it was just like you said. It looked. I loved the tractor beam pulling it. I loved it kind of it behind our class ship. That was really pretty, and it was just fun to. Even though I can't remember, it's fun to go to be on a historical ship. And that will play out in future episodes and be not forgotten and not lost. And and Picard's whole romanticism of that ship, and his connection to it, and his passion for it, and the delight in seeing it again.
What about you, Cirroc?
Yeah. I think you knocked it out of the park with that one, Denise. I'm going to have to second what you said. I think the ship itself was the home run. The design of the ship, the look of it, both the interior and the exterior shots. I liked it, and I also think that Picard's carrying an episode for a large part of it with no other cast members, and it's just you alone on the bridge, is not an easy thing to do. And I think he did a good job of pulling that off, because when you're by yourself, you don't have any other person to lean on. There's really not much special effects going on except for those people that really don't make as much sense. And so it's just him, and he has to carry a big load. And I thought he did a good job of delivering those scenes.
I was going to say the same thing about the Stargazer. I was going to say my home run of the episode was, like the art department that redressed, and because you guys know the art department's constantly redressing the same sets. You can't just go build new stuff all the time. Week by week, you're always redressing, and you have to do it convincingly. And it was convincing for me, and I enjoyed seeing it. So I think they get the home run of the episode for me. Let's give some special thanks to some special people before we hop over to that free-for-all. Oh, and Homer Frizzell.
Let me add just one real quick thing. Sorry. As soon as Captain Picard smelled smoke, I knew what the deal was, because where there's smoke, there's fire engine.
Oh. Thank
goodness. I've been working all day.
Wow.
Patent pending.
Nice.
I throw one bad one in there.
So special thanks to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales with a migraine, feel better soon, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Okun. Also, Titus Moeller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Palat. Check out his new videos on YouTube, by the way. Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Jed Thompson, Amy Renee Haynes, Sean Mouch, Marcia Classic Schreier, Lambda Quadrant's own Randy Frank, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Thank you all for hanging with us. We will see you on the other side on the Seventh Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all. Of course, Denise Crosby, Cirroc, Lofton are here. Melissa Longo is joining us wearing a very special new shirt from StarTrekAndChill.com. Go check that out. It's Stembolt and Chill, and it's got our favorite humans on it, and, the actors, I guess, Human and Ferengi. We've got Carrie Schwent here with the coolest background ever, quite possibly. Justin Weir's here with his Chat Pack shirt. What's up? Chris McGee is here. Looks like some kind of flight simulator stuff behind you or something. Jason Okun is joining us. Welcome. Homer Frizzell is hanging out with Livingston, and Mai is live in Tokyo. All right, Melissa. Oh, wait. I always forget this. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Ooh. I'm going to say probably like 6.3.
Anybody else have any guesses?
Looked.
Sounds
Lower?
about right.
Let's make it lower.
Low sixes.
Justin, that was you? Low sixes? Yeah.
You know, surprisingly, it's actually surprisingly to me. Yeah, it's a 6.0.
No,
It's
8.
Sorry, 6.8, which makes it
What?
much higher than last week's episode, Justice, which was a 6.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I actually like Justice better.
Me too.
I actually enjoyed that episode better.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It was
I
more
think-
interesting.
yeah.
Well,
Got a lot
interesting.
more going on.
Well,
Yeah, it was more interesting. Yeah.
We were glued to the
Right.
screens. Well, Melissa, what do you think of today's episode, by the way?
well, I'm going to start with a quote from the Ferengi First Officer.
Not what I was expecting. I can tell you that right on top.
Oh,
I thought she had gas.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that line jumped out at me. But also, I want to highlight the music first and foremost because that made my ears perk up multiple times throughout this episode, specifically when Picard first beams aboard the Stargazer, and there's this feeling of nostalgia and whimsy when he first steps on the bridge of the Stargazer, and it wouldn't have been nearly as potent if the music wasn't present. And I was like, oh, that's so nice, so such a sweet moment. I also liked that Picard was reading books, like actual books, in the teaser in the very first scene, because that shows character too. It shows one, obviously he likes to read, but it also shows us that he likes historical things, like, you know, classic historical objects. I'm assuming this fish tank is a hollow image of some sort. Being, well, yeah. Anyway, anyway, and then the last thing that I will bring up is the line from Dr. Crusher saying that the common cold has been eradicated, and I'm like, gosh, I wish we were there. No more colds.
Tell me about it.
And no more headaches. Wow.
You could cloak. She could cloak a headache.
Oh yeah, cloak
Yeah.
a headache. That's great
Yeah,
too.
that was nice. That was cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they called it cloaking. That was an interesting thing. And our good buddy Eve England out in Wales messaged us that since she's not coming in today because she has a migraine, and she said she's taken aspirin or whatever, but now she's calling it a cloaking device because of this episode. So that was clever on her part.
Awesome.
Equally clever is Justin Weir, aka Shag840. What's up? Did you like this episode? What'd you think?
Hello. Well, you know, it's funny because even a couple of days ago in my head, I was like, this is an awesome episode. I love this episode. And I think it makes sense now because the writing, the story wasn't really there. It was kind of boring, but it did set up Picard's like backstory, the Stargazer. We revisit that so much more. So I think that plays a big part of why. Oh, and the Picard maneuver. So I think that's why in my head I built it as a better episode than what it was. But things that jumped out to me when they're on the view screen and Picard is talking, Troy is the one who cuts the hailing frequency, and I'm like, she can do that? What gives her that right?
That's right.
And this question has always bothered me. So they beamed the Ferengi right on the bridge.
Right.
So they can beam people anywhere.
Yeah.
So what is the transporter room really for? Is it more formal? Does it save power? I've always wondered that.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Huh.
I thought a good line was, as you humans say, I'm all ears. I noticed that when the Ferengi captain, when he beamed away, his transport was different. It was like a spiral, circular. That stood out to me. I thought a line that came from Deep Space Nine that I thought was Data. He should have been like, "It's a fake." Favorite line is, where'd it go? I lost it. Never mind. When Picard was on the battle bridge and he was like tripping out and it wasn't real, I was like, Picard is playing captain. That's kind of what I do when I'm alone in my room. I'm like, shields, battle. No, not really, but
yes, really, and it's okay.
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
The least favorite line was, "You're welcome, ladies." Adults.
Oh, that's my favorite line.
All right, let's just hop right over to Carrie
seeing y'all.
then. What's up, Carrie? What was your favorite line of the episode?
Oh, I love the way he said it, just sort of leaning in, just adults. It amused me because we've all been there when adults say stuff to us and then leave. We've all been there.
They should have played Will Smith. Take it from me, parents just don't understand.
Yeah,
that would have been a nice drop right there.
For sure. Yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I think Picard is fantastic, and he's adds a few more layers. And anybody who has ever had a headache that just doesn't go away, you know how you get crabbier and crabbier, no matter where it's coming from. And I've got something that my husband pointed out, but I will do my limerick first, and then I'll come back to that. So we've got, Captain Picard has some pain in his head. Ferengi meeting is causing some dread. Spock has brought his old ship, but doesn't ask for a tip. He wants revenge for his son who is dead. Yeah. I actually enjoyed working on that. The first line is always the hardest, and then the rest just sort of kind of tumbles into place. Especially when you get a rhyming dictionary, that actually helps out a lot.
Wait a minute, are you allowed to use rhyming dictionaries? Homer says no. I saw Homer say no.
I would love to see them without the rhyming dictionary, or to hear them.
Challenge accepted.
There are some words that we don't even know what they look like when they're written down. I mean, just take yourself back to Melissa's opening quote.
Challenge accepted. I promise to do the next one without a dictionary. But the thing I mentioned before that my husband actually noticed, and I wrote down the little exchange with when Beverly is in Picard's quarters and is trying to figure out his headache. She says, "I can't see anything wrong." He's saying, "Neither can I, unless there's some kind of trap." And she finishes her sentence with your head. Kind of a foreshadowing a little bit there to what is actually going on with his head. I didn't notice that until he pointed it out, and I love that.
Yeah, that was a great moment. We didn't cover that. It's a great moment.
Yeah, I had never noticed that before until he brought it up. And I've got a few other funny lines, but I will save those for later. I will finish with wholly useless blanket Batman. That blanket that Beverly covers him up with when she sort of tucks him into bed. looks so thin and uncomfortable. I mean, you'd have to be sedated to actually enjoy a blanket that looks that thin. But that's just me. I like my comfy blankets.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Up next is somebody that has been called a comfy blanket in the past. Of course, it's Homer Frizzell. Cozy.
So I don't think that happened, actually. But I just have to say I like it when we get to see another ship and how they are so creative about using other ships or scenes that we've seen before. Like the Stargazer, I think it was there was an element of Star Trek 4 in there. There was an element of the battle bridge, I think, that we saw in Encounter at Farpoint. But the main thing I want to talk about really is that finally the Ferengi are moving towards this profit-based type of race that we know and love. And eventually, I mean, how far away can it be until the rules of acquisition? And then we get to number 7. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I have issues with just whoever came up with the branding of the thought maker, but that's another story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Mai is live in Tokyo. Oh, that's all 3 ships behind you. Cool. How are you?
I'm sleepy, but other than that, good. Yeah, I thought finally some good character-based storytelling. You know, but it was a little limited. Picard, Riker mainly, a little Beverly, a tiny bit of Pre-Geordi, some early Data, but no Worf, Tasha, Troy. I thought, come on, guys, get them all involved here. We're presented with Picard facing a past he's now unsure of, feeling possibly guilty, doubting himself. We have Riker going into professional number 1 mode, acting protectively of Picard. This character development was way overdue, I thought. The Ferengi's still hard to watch, completely lacking in the development that their sister show, what was it called? Showed us 5 years later. But yeah, it was good. The one thing that stuck out to me was at the end when Picard goes, "Let the dead rest." And I thought, where the heck did that come from? So I did a bit of digging. I think it came from Ecclesiasticus, from the King James Bible. Which is it's a work accepted by the Roman Catholics, but not by the Protestants or the Jews, who see it as a bit apocryphal or of doubtful authenticity. It came from the Hebrew Bible into Greek, like 200 years after, 200 years AD sort of thing, and then it came into Latin. And I figured we got us some Latin in this episode, so here it goes. It says the where it comes from, I think, says in requie mortui requiescere fac memoriam eius, et consolare illum in exitu spiritus sui, which translates to, when the dead is at rest, let his remembrance rest. Mm-hmm. And then it goes in and be comforted for him when his spirit is departed from him. I think that's where they took that from. They sort of paraphrased it. But this is a very corporeal stance, quite different from the rather metaphysical position stated by our very own Tasha Yar some episodes hence. So I thought, interesting. I like the second approach to what happens, and so yeah, it was okay. It was interesting to look up, but the one that comes in a few episodes is definitely my favorite. We'll talk more about that.
Stay tuned for that. You know you're doing good stuff when you see Cirroc Lofton taking notes on what you said. So that's A+ knowledge right there. Faith Howell is joining us too. Welcome, Faith Howell, on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Jason Okun, what's up? Welcome. Good to have you. What'd you think of this episode?
Thank you very much. I guess this episode is, for me anyway, a lot of these early Next Generation episodes are guilty pleasures, if you will. They aren't exactly terrific. But to me, this episode is almost a transition from the early stages of the Next Generation to, I guess, the mid-stage of the first season. I think it was the last one filmed before the show actually premiered. So there's certainly a difference as to what people start doing when you actually see the finished product. But I think Haven, even though it airs later, I think it was filmed earlier. So I think it's just...
That's right.
I think it was done in August, and this was done in early September, or early to mid-September of '87. So there's a bit of sort of this early type of stuff in Haven as well. but we start to get to see something that's a little bit more toward what the Next Generation will be, and a little bit less of what I think you had said resembled the original series in terms of its kind of look and tone. There's still issues. I mean, this episode has plenty of them, and I mean, some of it is compensated by, I guess, the music. The Stargazer theme is pretty good, and I think the actual establishing shot right in the teaser through with the I guess with the fish tank was really interesting. I think it may be the only time we see the fish tank in Picard's quarters. I mean, I mean, why would you have fish on a ship that shakes is beyond me, but there are issues kind of throughout. I mean, the Stargazer gets abandoned because it's on fire. What is it, made of plywood? I mean, literally, it said the ship was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
The entire ship was on fire. I mean, there are a few things like that in there. But overall, I think, I guess the show is trying to find its footing. And I think, Rob Bowman did a pretty good job trying to make it look a little bit different than others.
Mm-hmm.
And Denise, there's something I wanted to ask you, and I've noticed this in the first season, especially early in the first season. The blocking at the backside of the bridge, it almost looked like people were put in to prevent I guess the reflection of the lights from the back panels there. They look standing blocking the lights.
Yeah, wow. That's interesting. I don't recall that it was purposefully done that way. I think that again, they're just trying to figure out what that whole area does, who does what we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. What is Tasha's real relationship with Worf? He reports back to her at one point in the show that the ship has no more surprises, all clear, Lieutenant Yar. But you don't get it was never fully examined or outlined or explained to us what the dynamic of these two is. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of, I mean, I had forgotten completely this episode. I have no recollection of shooting it, what it was about. You could have told me we're going to see the battle, and you could have said, said it to me in Greek. But when Worf talks to reports to Tasha Yar and gives her that information, it sparked something in me. I went, oh, interesting. So he's subordinate, he's a subordinate to me. But it never really played out that way. It would have been nice to really illustrate that further, have moments of that in detail between these two. Like Ryan, that was what you were on about.
Mm-hmm. I'm always nerdy about like the character dynamics, because I think that whether we realize it or not, that's really what we like best about Star Trek. It's just the characters and how their relationships with each other. I think that's really what it boils down to. What we're always thinking about is the characters. Well, that's great stuff, Jason. Thanks very much for that. And by the way, Jason, you mentioned what was that episode? Haven. That was recorded beforehand, because we had Armin Shimmerman, our good buddy, coming on saying he was the face in that, whatever it was. And he recorded that before The Last Outpost, which was actually episode 4. So in some weird way, they recorded that part of episode 10 before they shot, I don't know if it was the whole episode of The Last Outpost or just his parts. All right, Chris McGee, what's up? How are you? Good color in your background.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I got a new camera, so it brings the color better than my old one. So this episode, admittedly, is a little bit boring, but it was still quite fun, I thought. I liked Picard's acting. I mean, whenever I get a headache, I make the same faces that he did. So pretty much. So good job there. Cirroc, I know that in the last episode, you were tired of seeing all the balls, and we got another pair of them here in this episode. Sorry about that.
Yeah, they did have balls in the last one and this one, both back to back.
And I agree with Melissa. I would love to live in a world where there's no headaches, or at least they're cloaked, or no common colds. That would be fantastic. And I do like the kind of an interesting difference shown between the societies. Like in Starfleet, you're going to get taken out of command if you do something illegal. Klingons, if you do something dishonorable, and Ferengi, if you do something unprofitable. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see that sort of thing. I didn't catch any non-appearance mentions in this episode, unless... Oh, did anyone else catch any, by the way? Names?
Did he say the name of his son? I don't know if that counts.
No, I don't think so.
Wait.
I've never seen his son.
What did Picard say about his son? I didn't catch that.
No, the other guy's son, the Ferengi son.
Oh, yeah, no, not if we never see him, yeah.
Yeah, not if we never see him.
So the only one that I heard was Vigo, but we never see Vigo, and hopefully he's not a Carpathian. As for the phrase of the episode, Melissa kind of took the one that I love the most there. As you humans say, I'm all ears. But there's also the "You're welcome, ladies, adults," which is fantastic writing. And finally, headache. And that's all I got.
Oh, when Picard, you mean when Picard snaps at Crusher?
Like, yeah, right at the very beginning.
You do know what a headache is, right? I thought, wow. It's a little...
He's snippety.
Snippy. Sometimes you just want to say, go, just take a chill.
She should have said, "You're giving me one right now."
Yeah,
right.
That's how we know he's not really French, because French people are not known to be snippy in any way. Let's change the subject.
That's what she should have said. Oh, your French is showing.
Yeah. Somebody forget the accent. Somebody give him a croissant. He'll feel better in the morning.
Oh, God. Right?
What's up, Faith? How are you? Good to see you.
Be here. I've missed you guys.
I know.
We miss you too, Faith.
So I liked what Jason, I think, said. This is sort of a guilty pleasure episode. I feel like this episode is one that sticks in my memory as like important and influential. And the Stargazer seems like such a big part of TNG mythology in general. And I feel like I believe it's come back through with the Picard series as well. But it just didn't seem as prolific rewatching it somehow. But I one thing I will add is that I definitely, if like I had a chance to go back to an old apartment that I lived in and a bunch of my stuff was still there, that would have been the first place I went. Why are we on the bridge? Like, I'm going to go to my room and get my stuff back.
Yeah.
That I had to abandon suddenly.
Right.
So, I thought the same thing.
It was an interesting choice that let's go sit on the bridge and have a headache for a while. I'll go sit in my room.
Well, if you did
those
go
books
back
look
to
special too, right? Those books look like, why would you leave those behind? Those look like
well, I mean, it was a crisis situation, right? So they had to
that's right.
abandon ship, but so that it makes sense that there would be stuff behind. But like, let me go get that real fast. I'll be back.
Faith, if you did go back to an old apartment, would you want to see a bunch of your old roommates, like his ghosts, kind of like looking at you and doing weird stuff?
Being that I have never had roommates that weren't like my husband, no, that would be bad juju. But I like him to not be a ghost, but he could be there. It's fine.
Oh, let me ask you this too. Correct me if I'm wrong. When Picard opens his chest, that he had left behind, and those beautiful little leather books are in there, isn't that orb in there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why would he go? Hey, I didn't leave that there.
That was really weird to me. Like, yes, we're assuming he didn't see it, but it was glowing.
Maybe that was part of the mind control that it kind of blinded him to its presence or something. Well, trying to make the puzzle pieces fit.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't scan the items before they brought them on board, because they are his old items, who knows what's been done to them between when they had to abandon ship and now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, what, how many years?
9.
9, yeah.
I think that would fall on Data, Chief of Operations.
Yeah.
Plus the Ferengi, would they leave anything
scanner.
value in there? Yeah. Would the Ferengi leave anything in there?
That's an excellent point.
So.
They would
whole
not.
thing was just really suspicious.
Yeah, but they wouldn't give them a ship either, which is why Damon was dethroned.
That's right. Yeah, good point. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, Cirroc and Denise? Top 10 episode so far?
Out of 10? Yeah, we've only done 9. So it's gotta
be. It is really interesting to watch an episode that you have absolutely no recollection of. You know, it's like I had a brain scan, like the Ferengi was in my thoughts, took and erased it. You know, I just can't even remember this one at all. So it's like, I mean, I'm there. I saw myself there, but it's kind of an odd feeling to go and watch something that you have no memory of.
Yeah, I thought. Well, first I'll give a little quick shout out to Data because I like the face that he makes when Riker says to him, "Is there anything that we could do for the Picard maneuver?" And he's like, "There's nothing." And he's like, "We'll figure it out." He looks like, like, okay, I'll figure it out. And then he does the move where his face goes like this, but he's actually figuring it out. But I like the face that he kind of goes into because it could double as, I don't know what the hell you're asking me to do kind of face. It could play both ways, the face he makes. But at the end, so I've noticed a little bit of a theme with this show, and that is Picard tries to sum up what the show is all about, or the morality that they're trying to leave behind, or what the lesson is. And for this one, it was, there is no profit in revenge. And it went on to quote, let the dead rest, which gave us a very good explanation of. But essentially, that's what this episode is trying to convey, the idea of no profit in revenge. It seems like a weak kind of story lesson for that, because, I'm sure that people do feel some kind of sense of fulfillment in revenge when they do execute it. And certainly the Ferengi was feeling something in that. And also letting the dead rest, I guess there is something to that, but, we also honor the past and draw from the things that we learned and what we would consider the past or dead time or space. But so I just don't know that the lesson itself was really brought across with the episode for me. I didn't see them hitting that point extra hard. I do think the Stargazer was the big thing. I did like drawing it. It was one of my favorite things to do. Sweet Stargazer.
Awesome.
And then I thought the Ferengi ship looked like a mushroom from some particular angle. I was like, it's like a mushroom design. But overall, I guess that's what you take away from it. You have to. I always try to remind myself it was 1987 when this came out, and nobody else was doing this on television with ships and space and all of this stuff. And so I give them a little bit more lee room to kind of find their way at this point, because they are breaking ground on some, in the 80s on some stuff that really wasn't that hip, and people weren't looking for that at that time. So they're having to make people buy into this whole universe. And so far, I'm buying on the characters. I really enjoy the characters. Maybe the stories and the plots are not so good, but the characters are developing relationships. They're developing their mannerisms, and I like the interplay between them. So that's really the takeaway from this. I'm not going to remember this episode. Say, oh yeah, you remember that episode about I won't walk away with anything life changing from it, but I do get some enhancement on who these guys mean to each other. I mean, Riker looks at Picard like he will do anything to save his life. It's like this guy, and that's the kind of guy you want on your team if you're going to be in battle in the trenches. You want a guy who's going to be like, who's got your back to that degree. And I feel like Riker has established himself as a guy who's willing to go as far as it takes to ride out with Picard, kind of like a Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan scenario.
We were all thinking the same thing. Yeah. we're all like, oh, it's like Scottie Pippen. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Well, thanks very much for playing with us, Malissa, Justin, Carrie, Jason, Homer, Faith, Mai, and Chris. It's been a lot of fun. Everybody at home, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next week. And until then, for Malissa, Aaron, Cirroc, Denise, and myself, always remember the 7th rule.